Helen of Foregates by Ethel Carnie. Chapter 14. At the 11th hour, Martin decides to live. The red October sun, one of its curves flattened by a cloud that was trying to break itself on the heights of the cobblestones, sent a crimson glow into Lizzie's kitchen. That always busy woman was sorting out hard, grubby apples, such as grow wild in the neglected farm orchards of the north, for no other purpose but to provide additional pig fodder. Whenever she found what she termed a decent apple, bang it went into a tub under the table beside which she stood. The rest went into the fire, which was built halfway up the chimney, to dry a great heap of rushes and bracken for cattle bedding. The bang of the apples falling into the tub, the spluttering of those in the fire, mixed in with the tick of the clock and the pipe of a cricket in the warm ashes. Lizzie had put on her best Sunday apron. Aggie was wearing a new blue ribbon on her curls. All this was in honour of Martin Scott's recovery. Teddy was out taking the summer's growth from the edges, making ditches for the winter rains. No one would buy his farm. "Don't keep flacking about," Lizzie scolded Martin. "The doctor said a chill might finish thee. Dear, chaps are the restlessest things God ever made." Martin gave no answer. Swaddled in rugs and blankets on the couch that faced the farm window, he was staring into an ashen sky where the sun would soon go down behind the stones. Lizzie sighed. Martin had not had a word to throw to the cat all afternoon. The way he had tossed about had almost broken her heart. "That'll be thy father," she told Aggie. Aggie ran out to look. She flew back. "It's Helen," she announced, and was about to run off again to meet her. "Come thee back," commanded her mother. She turned towards Martin on finishing these words. "Aggie and me's going to gather more apples," she told him, with a look that said he didn't deserve it. "Thanks," he smiled. "Keep out at draughts," she warned him, and went off to dodge into the orchard without Helen seeing them. She had a pleasure in leaving the two together. She had not forgiven Day his breaking of their window. It seemed an eternity to Martin before the door latch moved to Helen's hand. He had crawled from the couch, throwing aside the rugs, and trying to fix himself in Teddy's chair and appear at his best, with human shame at being so weak. Looking like two lass nailed together, as Lizzie said, his anxious, hungry gaze was glued to the doorway she would pass through. The door opened, closed again. She came straight towards him. The sight of her face gave him a shock, hurt him like a physical blow. She sank on the rug near his chair, clutching at his hand like a wild thing. "Get me out of this, Martin," she breathed rather than spoke. "Get me out of it somehow. It's driving me crazy. Or maybe I'm crazy now. Let's get to then, no matter what it is. If it's the grave, let's get into that and have done with it. Maybe they'll bury us together." No, Phil wouldn't do that. She stared into the fire. There was silence between them, save for a reiterated plea to him to get her out of the misery he had brought upon her. Womanlike, she thought her broken God could perform miracles. He had refused her the best. His pride forbade the offering of the worst, a broken body, a mind embittered by those years in which he had drunk the dregs of life and still been thirsty. The old habit of thinking came to him. He was trying to defend her from this hungry but unworthy self of his, as he had fenced to defend himself from her. "Where can we go? There's nowhere to run to," he said, chillily irrational. She rose tall and straight, her head flung back, her face with that frantic look. "Speak like that to me again," she said, "and thou'll never see me again." Staring into the fire, he crumpled up miserably. "I can't work for thee," he jerked. "Thou'll not need," she assured him significantly. "I couldn't have thee work for me," he said, calmly, as stating a chemical fact. "Thou'll not need," she said faintly, smiling. Then, with desperate energy, She sank on the rug again, clasping her knees with those thin hands of hers. Her chin was leaning on them. Her eyes stared wildly into the fire. "Look here," she said fiercely. "I've had enough on it, Martin. Enough of hypocrisy and shame on it. Enough of wanting to be here and staying yonder and wondering how much more to suffer yet. I can't bear the crawl of his fingers about me. I can't. I'm a honest woman. I wasn't cut out for it, and I'm not going to slink here like a guilty thing to catch sight of thee now and then. Let's end it. Field'll kill us, but we'll not run away from him or Foregates. We'll be together as we were meant to be, and pay price. Let's be what we were meant to be, and then face Foregates and him." She was asking him to go and be killed along with her. She was mad, must be mad. She was all his. They were equals, the mad woman, the one-lunged man. Besides, 6 years of life pauperized on another man's hearthstone. The trips were kind. They wanted him to stay, poor as they were. That was a grimmer tragedy than to be killed. It appealed to his mood. To be kicked out by day and have Helen tortured, no. To be killed along with her and have the laugh at him that they went together, yes. "Lass," he murmured, slipping a weak arm around her neck. "Thou'll go back on me," she whispered, unbelievingly. He took her face between his hands, made her look at him. A relief at some end in sight was upon him. It took away that hopeless trap feeling. They were going to meet the gods who had laughed at them, to offer them the remains of the sacrifice. "For better, for worse," he said. Then, seemingly, we've cursed one another instead of blessing, burnt one another instead of healing. There's naught left but worst, but I'll take thy worst, and thankful. I'm not much, and there's things out to tell thee." He stared into the fire, frowning, the horror of those nights when he had tried to choke her memory, reviving. She laid her fingers across his lips. There was neither scorn nor pity in her look, but a weary, pagan disdain. "I know," she said simply. He started. "I guessed. What's it matter anyhow? It's all just as it happens. What's it to do with me? Am I a Christian? What's thy morals to do with me?" There was fierce protest in her voice now. He looked at her. The distracted expression on her face was abating. He was beginning to realize that she was not mad, only desperate. He was beginning to realize the simple strength of her. The splendor of her rushed at him, dazzling him. The courage of her put him in awe. This was the woman whom he had argued to himself about for 5 years. Physical weakness overcame him. He burst into tears. "Christ," he stuttered, "what a mad fool!" It was his epigram on himself. "Don't touch me, I'm not worth it," he said moodily. She became a child. Then, wiping his eyes as she had once done when he wept about his dead mother on coming to the farm. "The worst to offer," he said bitterly. She was rubbing her cheek against his hand. "This is the best," she said, smiling. "It's what they've all to take in Foregates, those pairs that live quiet lives and die quiet deaths. They've got to get down to one another's worst and be glad on it. But oh, Martin, if I could only live years and years and years with the smoke going up fra our chimney and saying good morning to the other women as I brought in for dinner, as happy as them and as miserable when we'd had words, and to grow old together and see thee in the nook and ask thee of a morning how thy cough were, and thee after my rheumatics." She choked back childish tears, smiling wistfully. "I never wanted anything up in there," she confessed. "Just common things and a common life. But ne'er mind, it's done with now. Tonight I'll finish it. I feel it here." She laid her hand on her breast. Martin was staring at the ring on her hand. "We'll leave it in some water somewhere," she told him, following his glance. "Let's go," said Martin, rising. "Help me into me coat. Teddy's coat, I mean." He was without shame of his dependence. his having to be up now. He was her equal at last. They looked at each other by the light of the fire. She went to him with a little croon in her voice. Then she laughed softly. "I feel clean tonight," she said. "It isn't like there'd be any bothering tomorrow, and four gates gaping at us. It'll all come out. It's the only thing I've been flayed on. It's because I've lived in four gates, but we'll be dead, and it's when I'm living I care about most. I want to be happy once. They'll kiss me, as we were meant to, and it's finished. It's so simple." "How?" he looked. "If that goes, I go," she said, convincingly. He asked no further questions. "I wonder," she began wistfully. Then, "It's hard not to hope, isn't it?" There were tears in her eyes again. A white passion swept over her, born of her indignities. "I wish him dead," she exclaimed, in that intense way. "I wish him dead." "Don't let's waste time," said Martin. They passed through the doorway into that red and grey world, with the ball of fire in the sky and the crushing heights of the cobblestones looming upon them. Martin leaned upon Helen. They were holding hands, palm to palm. A mouthful of that mist might kill him, so the doctor had said. But there was nothing to be afraid of, since they were together, and so near bidding the world goodbye. Helen was happy. So was he. There was no condemnation of four gates to hide from. They would live, love, and pay the royal price of it. It wasn't the petty sessions, or the divorce court, or any of the sordid mix-ups of modern life. It was to snatch a mate and die for it, the woman going into the unknown with the one she cared most for. "Lass!" The tender intonation stole to Helen's ears. He felt that she smiled rather than saw it. The shadows were deepening, and the mist. Some kind of old antagonism felt to have passed from the face of the earth to those two. Slowly, almost inch by inch, they crept up to the heights they had loved from childhood. On gaining the top they stood still, looking over the dark expanse of the moor. A few pools shone red, catching the glow of the sinking sun. Over the black ling, the grouse screamed, "Go back, go back, go back!" The cry was borne away on the wet wind. Hand in hand they went on, until they reached a forest of bracken on the slopes. It was almost dark by this. They could scarcely see each other's face. Amidst the bracken, Helen spread her cloak, to check the rise of the dew. "It's dry," she told Martin, "and flesh and blood's warm. Cuddle down, Martin." There was peace in her voice. They crept together. The ghostly rustle of the dead bracken came to them, and at wide intervals the gabak of the grouse. Like two lost children they crept into each other's arms and were comforted. The sun went down. The earth grew colder. Watery gleams came from the moon, shining through the vapours. Through the night they talked, or were silent, huddled together, Teddy's coat buttoned round them both, Helen's hair a muffler for Martin's neck. They spoke of all that had happened to them, the inevitableness of this end, the glory of having come together at last, though for such a little time. They watched the grey dawn creep up, the sky changing to opaline splendour, the valley showing itself through chinks in rolling clouds, a dream world brightening into sunlight at their feet. The curlew's weird call came to their ears. They were both thinking the same thought, and read it in each other's eyes. "Bonnie," said Helen, and stretched out her arms to the world. Then she laughed, rather shakily. The little pools lit up one by one. The wings of birds were mirrored in them. "We'll go now," said Helen. "If Phil's set out after us, he'll have been without bite and sup, maybe, and him so helpless." She referred to her father. "Martin," she murmured, as if remembering something non-important, "I forgot to tell thee. He isn't my father. I found it out one night coming downstairs for a drink of water. He was sat over at fire talking, telling it to his shadow on th' wall. It were just after I took day, and it's made me able to bear with him." "Then he were all for nowt," said Martin hollowly. But he told us that time he came from fair, he muttered again. Helen explained in a few words. For now, he echoed, the irony of it sending him nearly out of his senses. There's somebody coming, he said suddenly. Look. Together they peered down into the film that half hid the hill slopes and the vale. It's him, said Helen, and he's forgotten to put his lantern out. It looks sickly, Martin. It looks like a death candle at the burn. Look how steady he comes on. I'm flayed. There was a shudder in her voice. The sweetness of life had turned her coward for a moment. Martin tightened his grip on her shoulders. I'd give 2 of me 6 years for a stick, he said. They moved further up the slope, crept through the bracken. Amidst their agony, they kissed convulsively, holding each other's hands. By peering through the bracken and down the edge of the heights, they saw that steady figure coming on. It's no good feating him. He's got a revolver, said Helen. I know. He's making straight for this bracken patch, he answered. Helen was leaning against him. Let him come, she said. I can't suffer any more, Martin. Will it hurt much? No worse than having a tooth pulled, a soldier once told me, said Martin, staccato fashion. Then he said, Curse the lost years. Curses on me for a mad fool. Give us thy lips. Just when he gets up th' edge, we'll kiss and shut our ear. I shan't be able to shut mine, said Helen hysterically. I always want to look what's coming. Then she tore herself from his embrace like a mad thing. Standing up, her black hair blowing about in the morning wind, her dress fluttering, her look went downwards to the approaching figure. He saw her. They caught his triumphant shout on the wind. He made a move towards his weapon, but the mist came down between. Helen's voice came to Martin where he lay near the ground, near the edge, unable to get nearer, a gust of coughing seizing him, tossing him about like a leaf, whilst he wept and clutched at the dead bracken in his humiliation of weakness. I'm not thine, she called in an ecstasy of victory. I'm Martin's, all Martin's. He's here with me. We've been here all night. A shout of rage came from the man in the mist. We like quail on moor, she called again, peering down through the mist. And when we're dead, we're mates still. Come and kill us. We don't care. We've lived. There was a report from the revolver, a blind shot into the mist. I'm here yet, she called. Thinking of Martin, yet. A cry left her lips. Martin heard it. He gave a yell of fury between 2 bursts of coughing. I'm not hurt, she called to him. Something's happened. He's falling. They heard the clattering of stones down the track Day was climbing. Then there was a yell and silence. Helen looked over the edge and went back to Martin. He's fallen, she said. No, I didn't push him. He fell. He was yards away. The mist lifted. Summat got up out of grass. Martin came to the edge and looked over. The lamp's fired, said Helen. She was speaking with difficulty. Then she said, Could a man fall so far and not be dead? Martin shook his head. I mun be sure, she said. Look, said Martin. The mist had lifted again. A man was almost leaping down the hillside, crashing through the dead bracken in his hurry to get away. Somebody's done it, said Helen. Let's get away from here. There was an uneasiness in her tone. It was hard to believe Day was dead. She feared his getting up again. I want to loot, she said, once. Better not, said Martin significantly. The sooner we get away, the better. She looked at him. Let's get back to Foregates then, she said. The old man'll be hungry and thirsty, but I couldn't go back without thee, Martin. They passed away from the tops, where the grouse, feeding as though they would never leave off, made the morning air astir with life. Sometimes as they went down, they paused to touch hands, lips again. They alighted some hundreds of yards from where that figure lay, the lamp smouldering out. I've got to see, breathed Helen, and ran from Martin's hold. She came back to where he waited. It's awful. He's dead, she said. It's true, Martin. We're going on living. Oh, She drew a deep breath of joy, looking at the sun, then gave a little shuddering sigh, drawing nearer to Martin. "I wish we could just live quiet the rest of our lives," she said. "I'm tired."